So, you want to own a towing company, and at first glance, it looks like one of the most recession-proof businesses you could possibly buy. Cars break down, cars crash, cars get parked where they shouldn't be. None of that stops in a bad economy. If anything, when people can't afford maintenance, it happens more. You buy a truck, you answer the phone, and you get paid to haul metal from one place to another. Simple, gritty, dependable. But underneath that simple surface is one of the strangest economic structures of any small business in this series. Because towing is a business where, most of the time, your customer did not choose you, does not want your service, and is often furious that they need it at all. And that single fact, that the customer is captive rather than willing, changes absolutely everything about how the money works. It creates enormous profit potential, and at the same time, some of the ugliest incentives in American small business. By the end of this, you'll understand why the same truck doing the same job can be either an honest lifeline or a predatory trap, depending entirely on who made the call. Let's start with what it costs to get in, because towing has a genuinely high barrier to entry disguised as a low one. The truck is the whole business, and trucks are expensive. A new flatbed tow truck, the versatile kind that can haul almost anything without damaging it, typically runs somewhere between $75,000 and $130,000. You can start cheaper with a used wheel lift truck, but you're still looking at a serious capital outlay before you earn a dollar. And that's just one truck. A real operation with a couple of trucks, proper equipment, and a storage lot can require upfront capital well over $500,000 once you add it all up. Then come the costs that never stop. Commercial towing insurance is brutally expensive. This is a business where you're driving heavy vehicles in traffic, often at accident scenes, taking legal custody of other people's valuable property. Fuel. Constant maintenance on trucks that do hard, punishing work. And if you want to hold impounded vehicles, you need a secured storage lot with specific legal requirements. One detailed operating model put a single operation's fixed overhead, before driver wages, at roughly $178,800 a year. Read that again. Before you pay a single driver, before fuel, you may be carrying nearly $180,000 a year in fixed costs. And that number reveals the entire nature of this business, because those costs don't move whether your trucks run 10 jobs a day or 0. As one industry model put it bluntly, every idle truck and every empty hour directly erodes profitability. A tow truck sitting in a lot is pure loss. This is a volume business with a heavy fixed base, which means the whole game is keeping those trucks moving, and crucially, getting paid well for every move. So how much can you actually make? Here's where towing gets interesting, because the profit range is enormous. Reported net margins run anywhere from 10 to 15% at the ordinary end, all the way up to 70% on certain services for well-run operators. Gross margins on individual jobs frequently land in the 50 to 70% range. A single truck doing 7 tows a day, at around $100 each, generates roughly $700 daily. Call it $200,000 a year in revenue from one truck, of which a well-run operator might keep over $130,000 as profit. But that massive spread, 10% for one operator, 70% for another, on the same equipment, is the real story. And the difference between those two outcomes comes down almost entirely to one thing: what kind of towing you do. Because there isn't one towing business. There are 3, and they could not be more different. The first type is consensual towing. This is the honest, friendly version everyone pictures. Your car won't start, you call for help. Or more likely your insurance or a motor club like AAA sends someone, and a truck comes to rescue you. You're grateful. The problem with this business, from the operator's side, is precisely that it's nice. You're competing with every other tow company in the area. The motor clubs dictate the rates, and those rates are thin. Roadside assistance work has been pegged around $95 per hour of billable work. Steady, but not where the money is. You're a vendor. You have little pricing power, and the customer could have called someone else. The second type is police rotation towing, and here the economics start to shift. When a car is abandoned, wrecked, or illegally parked on a public road, the police call a tow. But the driver doesn't get to choose the company. The police work from an official rotation list. To get on that list, a tow company has to apply, meet operating standards, maintain response times, and accept regulated fees. Getting onto a municipality's rotation is like winning a small, steady annuity, a reliable stream of calls you didn't have to market for, handed to you by the government. This is why those contracts are fiercely competitive, and in some places, politically charged. A spot on the police list can be the difference between a struggling company and a thriving one. And the third type is where the real money and the real controversy lives. Private property impound and non-consensual towing. This is when a car is parked in the wrong lot, an HOA space, a shopping center, an apartment complex, and gets hauled away, usually without the owner anywhere in sight. And this is a fundamentally different economic animal from the other two, because of one thing. The customer is completely captive. Think about the position the vehicle owner is in. They come out to an empty parking space. Their car is simply gone. They don't get to shop around for the best towing price. The tow already happened. They don't get to negotiate. The service was already rendered, whether they liked it or not. To get their car back, they have to find out who took it, travel to a storage lot that may be far away, and open limited hours, and pay whatever the invoice says, in the manner the company demands, before the vehicle is released. As the American Trucking Associations put it plainly, a non-consensual tow presents no opportunity to negotiate price or terms. The company has the upper hand, full stop. And this is the trapdoor at the center of the entire industry. Not under the owner's feet this time, but under the customer's. Because when the customer is captive and the service is compulsory, the normal force that disciplines every other business, the ability to walk away and choose a competitor, simply doesn't exist. And whenever you remove that force, you create a powerful temptation. Look at how the fees stack up in an impound. There's the base tow charge. Then there's the hookup or service fee. Then, critically, there are storage fees, charged per day. A county schedule might allow something like an additional $50 a day after the first 18 hours. Those daily charges are the quiet engine of impound profitability, because every day the owner takes to navigate the bureaucracy and reclaim their car, the bill grows. And here's the pressure valve underneath it. If the owner doesn't reclaim the vehicle within a set window, in some jurisdictions around 21 days after notice, they can lose all right, title, and interest in the car entirely. The vehicle can become the tow company's to sell. A slow, confused, or simply out-of-town owner can lose a car worth thousands over a parking violation. This is why predatory towing is a term regulators use, and why so many states have passed laws with exactly that name. Investigations by trucking groups have documented the tactics: overcharging for the tow, refusing to itemize the bill so inflated fees can't be challenged, overcharging for daily storage, and holding the vehicle and its contents hostage until an exorbitant invoice is paid. One striking finding: roughly a quarter of crash-related tow invoices weren't itemized at all, a common way to disguise excessive fees. There's even a specific abuse the laws had to address: the decoupling fee. That's when an owner runs back to their car while it's being hooked up but before it's been driven away, and the operator charges a fee just to drop it. States like New Jersey had to write rules declaring a decoupling fee presumptively unreasonable if it exceeds normal rates by a set percentage. Think about what it means that a law had to be written for that specific moment. Now, I want to be fair here, because this is not the whole industry, and most tow operators are not predators. The captive customer dynamic creates the temptation. Plenty of operators don't take it, and regulators have pushed back hard. Non-consensual tow fees are increasingly governed by official schedules set by municipalities, and in many places, if a company charges according to that authorized schedule, the fees are presumed reasonable. Storage lots are required to keep business hours and send certified notice to the vehicle's owner. Companies must retain invoices and job records for years for inspection. The entire regulatory apparatus around towing exists precisely because everyone understands the underlying economics. When the customer can't say no, someone has to set the ceiling instead. Which brings us to the strategic reality of running one of these companies. The three towing types form a ladder of profitability and risk. Consensual motor club work is low margin, but clean and steady. Police rotation is better paid and stable, but requires winning and keeping a government contract and meeting its standards. Private impound is the highest margin. Private property impound work has been valued around $170 per hour against roadside's $95. But it's the most regulated, the most reputationally dangerous, and the most dependent on relationships with property managers who control the lots. And there's a fourth path that the smartest operators chase hardest. B, 2B, and fleet contracts. Instead of chasing individual emergencies one at a time, you sign a deal with a trucking fleet, a dealership, an insurer, or a municipality for ongoing work. One analysis noted that a single B2B contract might represent something like 40 billable hours, meaning one signed relationship can be worth more than dozens of random emergency calls, and it fills the schedule predictably. Remember that $178,800 in fixed overhead. The operator who covers it with steady contract volume sleeps well, and the one relying on random calls and aggressive impounds is gambling every month. So how do you make a towing company genuinely, durably profitable, rather than just occasionally lucrative? You climb the value ladder. You start with a versatile flatbed that can handle high-margin specialty work, luxury vehicles, motorcycles, winch outs, rather than only basic hauling. You compete hard for a police rotation spot to get a predictable revenue floor. You build direct relationships with fleets and dealers for contract work that keeps trucks moving. And if you do impound work, the disciplined operators treat the fee schedule as a hard rule rather than a suggestion, because the companies that get greedy end up as the cautionary tale that triggers the next round of legislation. So, does owning a towing company actually work as a business? The gap between outcomes here is maybe the widest in this entire series, and it maps almost perfectly onto which side of the captive customer line you build on. In the good scenario, you run a professional, well-equipped fleet with a spot on the police rotation, a book of B2B contracts with fleets and dealerships, and a mix of specialty services that command premium rates. Your trucks stay busy, your fixed overhead gets absorbed by predictable volume, and your reputation brings repeat business and referrals. Margins land in the strong 20 to 30% range and beyond. The revenue is genuinely recession-resistant. And because towing companies sell on a multiple of their earnings, you're building something a buyer will pay 2 to 4 times annual cash flow to acquire. It's a gritty, unglamorous, genuinely good business. In the bad scenario, you sank $500,000 into trucks and a lot. You're carrying that punishing fixed overhead, and you couldn't win a police contract. So you lean harder and harder on aggressive private impounds to make the numbers work. You're one viral video away from a reputation catastrophe, one investigation away from a lawsuit, and one legislative session away from the impound fees you depend on getting capped. Meanwhile, a competitor with the police rotation and the fleet contracts is running steady margins while you fight for angry, one-time customers who will never call you again and will warn everyone they know. Same trucks, same equipment. Completely different business. Because you built it on the side of the line where the customer has no choice. And that side always eventually invites the regulator. Because in the end, that's the real lesson under the flatbed. A towing company doesn't just sell a truck and a winch. What it's really selling is access to your own vehicle at a moment when you have no leverage and no alternative. And that is either one of the most honest, essential services on the road, the person who shows up on the worst night of your week and gets you home, or one of the most predatory, depending entirely on a single choice the owner makes about how to treat someone who can't say no. The truck is the same. The winch is the same. What differs is whether the business is built to help a customer or to trap one.